So how do you ensure that your L&D has a return on investment? Return on investment is obviously typically measured in a financial return on investment, but I think there's a much broader definition when you look at return on investment for learning. And in fact, I did put this into ChatGPT last night, and Natalia is aware of that, just to ask it what it thought, and it was talking all about stakeholders and stakeholder interests. But I'm interested to get the panel's idea on how you ensure that L&D has a good ROI. And I'm going to ask you first.
Thank you. I'm probably going to go a bit rogue here. Even in my former roles as head of learning, I feel like ROI was really often about proving that the L&D team was designing right learning. And I feel like the world has actually shifted significantly. And Fiona, even I'm kind of, into using ChatGPT for all kinds of stuff, right? But the way I think that we potentially could challenge ourselves to not focus on ROI and not focus on kind of that really, because it actually takes quite a lot of effort and a lot of baselining and a lot of understanding, what's actually being delivered and how we're kind of shifting behavior or shifting proficiency level. There are two things that I think that we should focus on instead of ROI. And one is really making sure that your learning strategy is aligned to the organization strategy. If that's not aligned, I feel like you've kind of lost the game before you started. So really figuring out what are the key skills that the organization needs to be great at in order to win the game or to win the strategy that they've put forward for their key stakeholders. So interesting that comes up in ChatGPT. So I think the other piece is really working in partnership and figuring out what your business needs, what your executives need, what your organization needs, really tying that, as I said, back into the strategy, but then starting to look more broadly around, well, who are the partners that I need on the outside of my organization? Because if you keep too much of an internal focus, then it becomes too insular. So you kind of want to look at who are those partners that I can work with outside our organization to make sure we have a really expansive view, sometimes a really diverse view, or even disparate ideas to kind of challenge us and to keep kind of flexing and pushing. The number one reason, actually our research says last year that the number one reason that people stay is actually security at the moment. And so in order for employees to want to stay at an organization, investing in their skills and experiences, to me, sounds like a really sure bet and a great investment to help them be good at the things that the organization needs to be good at in order to win their strategy, and invest your time, energy, and money in those things. And that has a twofold effect. One is that the organization can win at what they set out to, but also employees become more employable for the future. So they're more likely to stay, have that security because they're more valuable to the organization. So I think, for me, I would probably tend to move away from it and really anchor into the strategy and making sure that's really aligned to what the organization, and spend all your time doing that rather than proving. There's lots of, talent marketplace, for example, I can talk more about that later. There's ways to do that really quickly now rather than investing in big kind of approaches for ROI. So probably a little controversial, Fiona, but I think it's just perhaps a different take on it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. I think you can focus too much on ROI without actually looking at what is the bigger picture for why we're doing this. And there, yes, you could kind of measure this in, if you train people and then you keep people longer, yes, there is a return on investment in that. But I don't think that, I agree with you. I think that the initial reason needs to be, building out capability, the security for your people, the skills development, and so that your organization can continue to keep pace with this rapidly changing environment. I think it's all very important. Jonathan, I'm going to ask you the same question. Do you at Microsoft look at, or how do you look at an ROI in terms of the L&D programs that you have?
Yeah, Absolutely, we do. So thanks, Fiona, for the question. And just reflecting on Anne's response from a moment ago, I don't disagree in respect to the fact that learning strategy absolutely has to have a deep and sort of symbiotic alignment almost to what the organization overall is trying to achieve. But I think also therein lies a lot of where the return on investment should come from. I think I agree with maybe what, and please stop me if I've taken the wrong inference from your answer here, but where we've spent maybe a lot of time in the past as learning professionals is absolutely how do we demonstrate that as a function we've been contributing. And that might be, here's a look at all the skills that our people have that they didn't have before, or here's how much X number of people that took X program enjoyed said program, and they've raved and ranted about how amazing this learning experience was. And I think the biggest question, even when I started my career in learning, in my mind was, okay, so what? Who cares about any of that? And why should any business leader keep giving you X amount of dollars for your learning budget if that's what you're going to return to them as a return on what they've invested in and with you? And so I think Natalia mentioned this, and so did Brendan as well, around context over content. Learning at the end of the day, in my humble opinion, is the same as change management. We are looking for a behavior or a practice that is not occurring somewhere in our business today, or needs to occur in our business at some point in the future that we don't feel as though will happen. And so as a result of that, we need to be crystal clear on what that behavior is, the learning intervention that then we give to the organization, and then measuring that change in behavior. And often with many organizations, that change in behavior will have a revenue impact. And so whether that's a sales skill, whether that's a technical skill, whatever that might, whether it be product knowledge, it can be any number of things. It's, hey, this group or this large, small, whatever it might be, team in our organization is not doing X. The downstream impact of that non-performance, or that that behavior not necessarily being enacted, is Y. We had a learning intervention, and now we're measuring over time that change in behavior, and that's our return on investment.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, because the opposite to that is if you don't do that and you've got to hire in those skills, that is ridiculously expensive. And the more specialist those skills, the more it costs you to hire them in, if you can in fact find them in the market. And we all know that there's massive skill shortages, especially in emerging skill areas. So I think that's a really valid point. Brendan, I'm going to ask you the same question. How important is ROI to you in terms of learning?
Sure. I'll keep my answer brief. It's pretty much elaborating what Jonathan said. L&D is kind of like a soft business, and we deal with intangibles. So our return on investment is measured over time. And if our learning artifact or program does result in a changed behavior, it's hard to trace whether learning is its cause. So not being a huge expert in ROI, but more ROE, which I like to use, which is return on expectation from a business perspective. And the way I do that, and this is more advice for, I guess, those who are in consulting or, frontline dealing with the business, is try to build the business requirements and expectations into your learning scope. Whilst us in L&D are not accountable for the business working, behaving, doing differently, if we have those conversations when we're upfront about, what do people want to do differently? What results are you looking for? What is the expectation for how you want people to apply the learning? You can actually guide your business leads through, getting that process in place, setting that expectation with learners on the side, especially in like technical skills, or I guess sales, anything commercially oriented. It's a way of adding more value to your skill set whilst we're not accountable. And it also does, I guess, protect us in a way in that, this massive program has been launched. It's bordering on change management. But it's a good skill set to have. It makes us more valued. It guides their thinking about getting the most value out of this program. And ultimately, if they are successful because the metrics they've agreed upon or the changes that they've nodded along to are successful, you've got a learning story to tell. You've got something to share with the enterprise. You've got people to say, oh my gosh, this program they went on actually helped embed this change. This gamified solution taught them a new way of working. And even from a selfish perspective, you've then got criteria for a good award submission at industry, because you've defined that up front, you've set the results, you've set business outcomes, and you've got something to present, you know, something you've measured that people have achieved.